True knowledge exists in knowing that you know nothing.
And true freedom lies in what we do with that realization.
Welcome to 1337, the future of podcasts of books. I'm Max, your host, diving into epic tales and hidden gems.
And I'm Sophia, here to unpack the art of storytelling and the pages that move us. We're exploring novels, classics, and the craft behind the words. Imagine for a moment two absolute giants of philosophy, millennia apart. Right?
Right.
One is, bedrock, Socrates. The other, Jean-Paul Sartre, the guy who basically defined existentialism for the 20th century.
Yeah.
What happens when they meet? Especially when one of them lands, boom, straight into what he calls hell.
Right. It's quite the setup.
Well, you're about to find out. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to a really unique deep dive. We're getting into Peter Kreeft's Socrates Meets Sartre. The father of philosophy meets the founder of existentialism.
It's such an audacious premise, isn't it? Kreeft creates this fictional dialogue, afterlife setting, and Socrates uses his classic method, the elenchus, his cross-examination, not just on Sartre's complex ideas, but on the raw emotions underneath it all. It's this literary device, this meeting across time that lets these huge ideas and personalities just clash directly.
Almost theatrical, yeah, like a philosophical smackdown.
Totally. A ringside seat to this huge intellectual bout.
Exactly. And our mission today, our real goal, is to dig out those crucial nuggets of insight from this amazing clash. We're going beyond just, summarizing. We want to unpack what existentialism really means for freedom, for truth, for just being human. We're aiming for those moments where you, listening, go, aha, getting clarity even from these, let's be honest, pretty dense philosophical ideas, making the abstract feel real.
And what makes this book, Socrates Meets Sartre, just perfect for this kind of deep dive, is how accessible it is. Kreeft wrote it to be short, clear, and non-technical.
Which is great.
It really is. It's not some dry academic thing. It's a living conversation. So it works whether you're totally new to philosophy or, you've been reading it for years and just want a fresh angle. He cuts through the jargon.
Gets right to the heart of it. And it's not just accessible. It's actually, fun to read. It's engaging. It's a debate, not a lecture. You see this direct philosophical wrestling match, exploring these huge questions. God, human nature, where do values even come from? And the style, it's conversational, witty, sometimes sarcastic.
Definitely sarcastic at times.
Yeah, it makes the whole journey really entertaining. You feel like you're eavesdropping on this incredibly important, maybe the most important argument.
It really does pull you in. It shows philosophy as this vibrant, ongoing thing, not just old books on a shelf.
Okay, so let's jump right in then, into the thick of it. The book kicks off with Sartre just, boom, declaring he's in hell.
Right away.
And not like fire and brimstone hell, it's internal. He's crushed by the absurdity, this nausea of existence, even after death. He says, there is indeed no exit from my own existence. I am in hell forever.
Stark stuff.
And then maybe the most famous line, condemned to freedom. Talk about an opening.
It sets the tone immediately.
Yeah.
And Socrates, just watching this, has this brilliant internal reaction. Kreeft writes him, observing Sartre, whining like a sick puppy, drowning in his own verbosity.
Yeah.
Socrates, the original lover of wisdom, is thinking, wait, is this a philosopher, all this self-pity? He realizes, okay, this isn't my usual kind of dialogue partner. This guy's a patient.
He gets a different approach.
Exactly. He needs to adapt his method. He's assessing not just the arguments, but the man himself.
You can almost see him thinking, okay, gentle Socratic questioning isn't going to cut it here. But the key is Sartre's state, trapped by freedom, burdened by it, seeing existence as pointless, utterly abandoned.
That sense of cosmic abandonment, yeah. And the weight of responsibility for everything, even being in hell. It's the perfect dramatic setup for the first big principle of existentialism, he explains.
Which isn't just some dry point. It feels like an emotional cry.
It really does. And that principle is, of course, the famous existence precedes essence.
The cornerstone.
Absolutely. The cornerstone for humans, specifically. What it means, basically, for you listening, is that unlike, say, a chair or a dog, we don't show up with a pre-written script. No built-in purpose, no fixed nature.
We just exist. First.
We just are. We appear, thrown into the world. And then, only after that, through our choices, our actions, we define who we are. We literally invent ourselves.
And Sartre's go-to example is the paper cutter. So simple, but it works.
It really does.
He says, look, a paper cutter has an essence, a design, a purpose that exists in the maker's mind before the actual object exists. Essence first, then existence.
Right. The blueprint comes before the thing.
But for humans, totally the opposite, Sartre argues. No divine maker, no cosmic plan, we just are. And then we create our own essence through what we do. It completely flips traditional thinking on its head.
And this leads him, like, directly and logically, maybe even ruthlessly, to say there is no human nature since there is no God to conceive it.
No designer, no design.
Exactly. So if there's no God designer, then we start as nothing. A blank slate, a void. Which makes that other phrase, man is nothing else but what he makes of himself, the absolute first principle, and flows right out of his atheism.
And it puts this huge, almost scary burden on us. Self-creation.
He doesn't shy away from it at all. He even criticizes earlier atheists, the 18th century Enlightenment folks.
But less obvious.
Yeah, them. He thought they were totally inconsistent. They got rid of God, but then they tried to hang on to these sort of ready-made universal values like, oh, we should still be honest, we shouldn't lie.
Like keeping the furniture after you've demolished the house?
Exactly. Sartre says, look, if God doesn't exist, then any idea of finding values up in some heaven of ideas just disappears. Poof.
No inherent good. No cosmic rulebook.
None. Nowhere is it written we have to be honest. Which is why he latches onto that Dostoevsky line.
Oh, yeah. If God didn't exist, everything would be possible. Or permissible.
That's the very starting point of existentialism, Sartre says. He sees it as the only truly coherent consequence of atheism, one that maybe other atheists were afraid to face.
And for Sartre, this isn't like, yay, freedom, it's distressing.
He uses that word, distressing. It leaves man forlorn, totally alone. Nothing external to cling to for values. A moral vacuum we have to fill ourselves.
And this whole almost anguished explanation leads to one of Socrates' most brilliant moves. After Sartre lays out this godless, valueless universe, Socrates just asks him, point blank.
With that Socratic twinkle.
Are you a theistic spy planted in the camp of the atheists?
It's classic Socrates, just brilliant. His reasoning is so sharp. By showing so clearly, so powerfully, the consequences of atheism, no human nature, no objective morals, everything allowed, total loneliness, Sartre actually makes the traditional arguments for God seem stronger.
Right. He paints such a bleak picture of the alternative.
That he inadvertently makes a case for God, maybe. For anyone who finds that bleakness unbearable, he's like the dark reflection that makes you appreciate the light.
It's like Socrates is saying, Jean-Paul, my friend, you're doing God's PR work here without even realizing it, by showing how awful it is without him.
Huh. Yeah, pretty much.
And that sets up the whole tension for the book and for us. Is Sartre unintentionally leading people back to the very God and objective values he's rejecting? It just hangs there. Makes you really question your own assumption.
Absolutely. And it leads right into the next big tangle. Truth, lies, contradictions in this godless world. Socrates jumps right on it.
He does. He challenges Sartre about honesty, reminds him, you just said, nowhere is it written that we must be honest, that we must not lie. So why be honest?
And Socrates, with that playful sharpness, just starts hitting him with these paradoxes. He's also a logical liar, a consistent liar, an honest liar, even a sincere hypocrite.
Whoa.
The point is devastating right now. If Sartre truly believes there's no objective reason for truth, then his own arguments, his claims about atheism, they lose their footing. Why should we believe him? He's just practicing what he preaches if he doesn't actually mean what he says, because meaning itself is just a choice in his system.
It's like a philosophical Juno flip, undermining the argument from within.
Totally. Then Socrates brings in Nietzsche's most dangerous question. Why truth? Why not untruth? Why not just lie?
A fundamental challenge.
And Sartre's first answer is basically, because you chose truth. That's your being. You are your choices. Truth is just another value you pick.
But Socrates pushes, naturally. Okay, so does that mean choosing dishonesty is just as valid, just as good, if I choose it?
And that's where Sartre kind of struggles. He tries to find a foothold, saying, well, the strictly coherent attitude is that of honesty.
But Socrates is waiting for that one. Why choose coherence, he asks. Suppose I don't want to be coherent. Why is consistency better than inconsistency?
If all values are just choices,
then why value logic itself?
Then Sartre, backed into a corner, has to admit it. He cannot give you any objective, universally binding reason, the value of truth. Up to you, all values are. Your choice creates its own justification for yourself.
Wow. That's radical subjectivity. You're the only judge and jury for your own values, including truth.
Which leads Socrates to this killer critique, the Credist paradox.
Okay, unpack that one a bit.
Right. Yeah. So Sartre, just by arguing, by trying to persuade Socrates using logic and consistent language is assuming those things work. He's relying on the law of non-contradiction, on words meaning roughly the same thing moment to moment. But he also claims those very principles, stable logic, stable meaning, are only really valid if there's a God or some objective ground. So he's using tools, he says, don't exist in his own godless universe.
Like sawing off the branch he's sitting on.
Exactly. Socrates uses this ancient analogy from Heraclitus and Credist. If everything is constantly changing, as Heraclitus said, then Credist argued, you can't even speak meaningfully. Words change meaning too fast. Argument becomes impossible. Socrates is saying Sartre's philosophy, if taken seriously, silences itself.
So how does Sartre respond to basically being accused of self-destructing his own argument?
Amazingly, he kind of owns it. He basically says, guilty as charged. He claims contradiction is the privilege of an atheist. He even quotes Walt Whitman.
I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes.
Yeah. He frames consistency and objective truth as just God without a face. Leftover bits of theism he has to reject to be a truly consistent atheist. It's incredibly bold.
But Socrates isn't done. He flips Sartre's own idea of idolatry back at him.
This is another great move. Socrates uses this analogy. You can't have counterfeit money if there's no such thing as real money in the first place, right?
Makes sense.
So Socrates argues, in Sartre's godless universe with no real money, no absolute God or objective values, how can there be counterfeits like idols? How can Sartre even use the concept of idolatry, make that moral judgment, without accidentally implying there was some real standard he's judging against?
Gotcha. He can't escape the ghost of theism even when he's attacking it.
Exactly. So Socrates hammers the point home. Sartre's atheism isn't a logical outcome. It's his starting point, his a priori. An unproven, basically arbitrary choice.
A leap of faith, almost.
Yeah, or maybe a leap of will. Like Nietzsche saying, how could I bear not to be a god? It's a foundational decision, not a reasoned conclusion.
And Sartre, under pressure, basically admits the circularity.
He does. He concedes, my atheism is my starting point. Everything else can be derived from atheism. But my categories are also my starting point, and atheism can also be derived from them. It's closed loop.
Which is when Socrates calls himself Dr. Frankenstein.
Yes. For helping bring this monstrously consistent but maybe terrifying philosophy fully into the light. It's a great moment of wit, acknowledging the potential horror of what's been built on that arbitrary foundation.
Okay, so we've nailed down that atheism is Sartre's ground zero, his chosen starting point. Now, to really get the mechanics of his system, Socrates makes him define those really tricky terms from being and nothingness.
Ah, yes, the big ones. Being in itself and being for itself. These are like the engines driving the whole thing.
So being in itself, what's that in simple terms?
Think of things.
Yeah.
Objects. Anything that's complete, finished, totally determined, no self-awareness. A rock, a table, a triangle. They just are what they are. No identity crisis. Fully present, solid.
Okay, solid, complete, like a thing.
Exactly. Then there's being for itself. That's us, human consciousness. And it's the total opposite. It's incomplete, imperfect, always sort of reaching, becoming.
Always in that identity crisis you mentioned.
Because it makes its own identity. It isn't given one. We exist, then define ourselves. It's this constant, restless process, never finished.
Which leads to that phrase that sounds like a brain teaser. Being in itself is what it is, while being for itself is not what it is.
Right. It sounds weird, but it captures his idea of the human condition. We're always striving to be something we aren't yet, projecting ourselves forward, never just being in the way a stone is a stone. We're always becoming.
And the classic example is the waiter.
The waiter in the cafe, yeah. He's playing the role of waiter almost too perfectly, right? The movements, the expression.
Trying to be the perfect waiter object.
Trying to achieve that being in itself of a waiter. But Sartre says he can't. He's always being for itself, always conscious of playing the role, never fully merging with it because he has no fixed essence to merge with. There's always that gap between his free consciousness and the role.
So why the complicated terms? Why not just say objects and people?
Sartre wants to stress this fundamental metaphysical difference. A dog has to be a dog. An acorn grows into an oak. They are in themselves. But humans, we can be. Well, inhuman in a way, because we aren't made with a fixed nature, we make ourselves. So being for itself is really just another name for that radical freedom or unique way of existing.
Okay, got it. So after clarifying these core categories, Socrates brings it back around. How do these ideas justify atheism? How does Sartre get from being in itself and being for itself to God doesn't exist? It can't just be a random choice, right?
Right. And this is where Sartre rolls out what Socrates cheekily calls his ontological argument for the non-existence of God.
Okay, I'm listening.
Sartre argues that the traditional idea of God perfectly complete and perfectly conscious and free is impossible according to his categories. God would have to be both being in itself, complete, perfect, and being for itself, conscious, free.
And Sartre says that's a contradiction.
A metaphysical oxymoron, he calls it. You can't be both finished and striving, both determined and free simultaneously. Therefore, such a being, God, cannot exist.
And he actually compares this to Anselm's famous argument for God's existence.
He does. Audaciously claims his is better. Says Anselm only thought about God as perfect being in itself, but he, Sartre, considered being for itself too, showing the impossibility. It's a huge philosophical flex, basically defining God out of existence based on his own definitions.
Wow, okay. And then where does the whole idea of God come from, according to him?
He says, man is the being that wants to be God. That's the origin. We, as incomplete being for itself, desperately want the solid completeness of being in itself, but we want to keep our consciousness and freedom.
We want to be perfect and personal.
Exactly. An impossible contradictory desire. So our fundamental human project, the striving to be God, is doomed. Man is a useless passion, he says, because the goal itself, God as that perfect synthesis, is metaphysically impossible.
And this is where Socrates makes that surprising connection to St. Augustine.
Yeah, it's fascinating. He points out how similar Sartre's useless passion sounds to Augustine's. Our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. Both see this deep, unfulfillable longing in humans.
Despite reaching totally opposite conclusions.
Right. Socrates even suggests Sartre might be, in a weird way, more religious than some theologians, and that his idea echoes concepts like original sin, this fundamental flaw or yearning.
How does Sartre take that comparison?
Not well. He quickly clarifies, no, the desire is for me to be God, for man to achieve it, not for some external God to exist. But Socrates twists it back.
Of course he does.
He points out that either desire wanting to be God or wanting God to exist still assumes God is somehow possible, which Sartre's whole argument denies. So Socrates suggests Sartre's categories seem almost rigged from the start to exclude God, not derived from neutral observation.
A philosophical preemptive strike.
Pretty much. And Sartre, again, circles back, admitting his atheism and his categories are really just two different ways of expressing the same single starting point. It confirms it's all built on that initial, unproven choice.
A self-contained, self-justifying system. Okay, so if we have no inherent nature, what is a human being then, in Sartre's view? He says, man has no nature, only condition.
Yeah, he totally rejects human nature. That would fix us, make us objects. He says we transcend nature precisely because we are free from being in nature. We are free, empty, pure potential.
And Socrates notes the paradox there. Mm-hmm. Our moreness, our freedom, comes from our lessness, our lack of fixed essence.
We transcend by what we aren't. And Sartre uses that image of man as a bubble.
Empty inside.
But full of energy, this constant will to action. Although, as Socrates dryly points out, bubbles, well, they tend to pop. It's a fragile kind of existence.
So for empty bubbles, where does meaning come from?
Sartre is blunt. Objectively, there is none. No God, no plan, no built-in purpose. The universe just doesn't care. But he insists, subjectively, there's meaning. Because we create it. We're the meaning makers. We launch meanings like rockets out into the emptiness. From our own emptiness, we project value onto a meaningless world. That's our job.
Which leads him to define man as?
Man is the sum of his acts. He even compares it to Aquinas, defining God as pure act.
Wow.
For Sartre, my being is my life. He means only our free, conscious choices and actions define us. Not our genes, not where we were born, not our subconscious feelings, only what we actively do.
Which explains why he totally rejects the unconscious mind, right? Freud, Jung, all of that.
Exactly. He throws it all out.
Yeah.
Because if there's an unconscious driving us, then we're not fully free, not fully responsible. It makes us passive. His humanism, as he calls it, is about stripping away all excuses. Your conscious choices are it.
And Socrates pushes back, saying, hang on, that's pretty far from, basic psychology and how most people experience themselves.
Yeah, it's a radical stance. And this is where the conversation takes that really personal, potentially awkward turn. Socrates starts his psychoanalysis of Sartre.
Focusing on women. Right.
Specifically, yeah. Socrates notes how Sartre had tons of female admirers, but few close male friends. And he links this to the man as acts philosophy.
How so?
He suggests Sartre's deep-seated disgust for anything gooey or viscous, like that tree root in nausea or pregnancy, or even spider webs.
Things associated with nature, growth, the body.
Exactly. Socrates claims this reveals a kind of fear of women, a psychology stuck on masculine projects, things you actively build and control, rather than things that just grow or happen to you. He even calls Sartre a philosophical male chauvinist.
Whew, that's direct.
Very. Sartre tries to defend himself, pointing to all his mistresses, Simone de Beauvoir.
His famous partner.
But Socrates counters, saying Sartre kept them all at a distance, avoided real intimacy, avoided marriage, suggesting he couldn't really connect with people as whole beings, maybe saw them more as part of his projects.
And he connects this to Simone de Beauvoir's own work.
Yeah, noting how her own bitter protest against everything feminine seemed to align with Sartre's rejection of receptivity, of potentiality, of all that gooiness.
Which leads to Socrates using his own famous line about not understanding women.
I understand philosophy, but I simply do not understand women at all. He uses it, ironically here, to point out Sartre's own massive blind spot, a philosophy uncomfortable with, maybe afraid of, the feminine.
And the implication is quite profound, isn't it? That maybe philosophies like Sartre's that prize only active projection and radical freedom from nature might be partly why women felt ashamed of being women.
It's a subtle but powerful suggestion that devaluing receptivity, biology, connectedness inherently devalues traditionally feminine aspects of experience. It's focused on the philosophical implications, not just personal attacks.
And to drive home the point that we are more than just our conscious acts, Socrates tells that story about his own face.
The physiognomist story, yeah, it's brilliant. This guy looks at Socrates' famously ugly face and says it shows he's a bully, arrogant, essentialist.
And Socrates.
Astonishingly, he agrees. He says, yes, those are the exact vices I struggle with constantly.
Wow, that takes guts.
He completely challenges Sartre's I am I acts. Socrates is admitting to this deeper inherent potential for vice or virtue that exists alongside or maybe even before his conscious choices, a predisposition, a chink in his armor, as Kreeft puts it.
It suggests we aren't just blank slates acting freely. There's something more.
Exactly. And Socrates even contrasts his own usually open expression with Sartre's grim one. Despite similar ugliness, linking it to their inner character, the truth they live by. They make Socrates so relatable and shows wisdom isn't perfection but self-awareness.
Such a great story. Okay, this leads us right into the deep end with Sartre's idea of freedom. Section 5. He boils it down to 3 things.
Yeah, his 3 pillars. 1, we're condemned to freedom. You can't escape it. 2, it's negative, defined by saying no to determination. And 3, it's absolute, no limits.
And he uses the French resistance as this powerful example.
Right, from the Republic of Silence. He writes beautifully about it. We were never more free than during the German occupation, because every choice, every word under that pressure became authentic, a declaration of principles, no safety nets, just pure, risky choice.
It sounds incredibly noble, but Socrates throws some cold water on it.
He does. He points out pretty bluntly that Sartre himself wasn't exactly dodging bullets in the resistance. Others described his work as mere chit-chat around a cup of tea.
Ouch.
Sartre apparently spent the occupation writing comfortably in cafes, even saying he was happiest then. So Socrates questions, can you really understand this absolute, tested-by-fire freedom if you haven't lived it?
Is the theory detached from the reality?
That's the implication.
Right.
Was it learned secondhand from others' bravery, not forged in his own suffering? It's a challenge to intellectual detachment.
And Socrates also attacks the idea that freedom is only negative, only about saying no.
Yeah, he argues real freedom has to include saying yes to, a freedom for something. If saying yes to values, to commitments like marriage, to accepting reality, somehow limits your freedom, well, isn't that a pretty impoverished kind of freedom?
A lonely freedom.
Sterile, almost. And Sartre takes it to the extreme. He says even accepting a gift limits you because it creates an obligation.
Seriously.
A gift. Seriously. Which leads to that terrifying conclusion.
Yeah.
Man is nothing but his behavior and is totally responsible for everything that he is, even things that happen to him.
Like being ugly, or even being in Auschwitz.
That's the chilling extension. If you're totally free, you're totally responsible for how you define and react to your situation. You choose your stance towards it.
Which brings us to that absolutely horrifying thought experiment Socrates poses.
The Auschwitz Hypothetical.
Yeah.
Socrates asks, how would you preach this philosophy to someone about to enter the gas chamber? Are they responsible for choosing the war, choosing not to commit suicide, choosing victimhood?
How does Sartre even respond to that?
He tries to justify it. Says there are no accidents. that you always define your situation, that your freedom is absolute and unique.
But the implication
Is monstrous, as Socrates points out. It suggests the victim bears guilt for their own suffering, and it wipes away guilt from the perpetrator, like Hitler. They just provided the situation the victim chose to define. It shows the moral bankruptcy of the idea when pushed to the limit.
Just staggering. Then Sartre says freedom's only goal is itself.
Freedom can have no other aim than to one itself. It's an end in itself, not a means to happiness or truth or God. Freedom is the ultimate value.
Which goes against how most people think of freedom, right? Freedom for something good.
Totally. His logic is, if God, perfect being, wills himself and has no higher purpose, and there is no God, then man takes that role. Our freedom becomes the absolute willing only itself.
And this leads to those two really stark conclusions.
With ruthless consistency, yeah.
Yeah.
First, no absolute good means no progress. Humanity isn't getting better or worse objectively. Choices just are.
No moral evolution?
Nope. And second, the big one, anything at all may be chosen, that everything is permitted. No God, no objective values means no moral compass beyond your own will. Any choice is ultimately justifiable by the chooser.
And Socrates, even while disagreeing profoundly, gives Sartre credit for the consistency.
He commends the ruthless logic, yeah, for showing the two stark choices. Theism with its package deal, or atheism with its package deal. But he notes how shocking these outcomes, no progress, everything permitted, are, even for most atheists.
Implying most people wouldn't actually want to live in that kind of world, even if they call themselves atheist. It forces you to confront the real cost of consistency.
Exactly. What are you really willing to accept?
Which brings us crashing into maybe the most counterintuitive part, Sartre's views on love, family, gratitude, things most people cherish.
I think Sartre seemingly despises. It's jarring.
He calls family a glue factory.
Yeah, an image meant to repel. He sees family, marriage as confining, sticky, viscous, bourgeois. Things that trap your freedom, turn you into an impersonal role like father or mother.
Roles are alienating, not fulfilling.
For him, yes. And he uses those same visceral images, the nausea at the pregnant tree root, the disgust at pregnancy, spiderwebs. He applies that feeling to the moldering family. Yeah. Raw existence, including connection, is this repulsive over-plus. Too much, too sticky.
And Socrates points out the huge contrast. Most people see being, life, family as a gift. Cause for joy, thanks.
Right, a blessing. But for Sartre, it's like a pile of maggots or excrement. This fundamental, almost physical revulsion at existence itself seems to be why connection, family, love are suspect in his philosophy. It's a radically different starting point for viewing reality.
And then love itself, he says it's impossible.
We desire it, he admits. We hope it saves us.
Yeah.
But true altruistic love, impossible. Why? Because of that core structure. Being in itself versus being for itself.
How does that make love impossible?
Because love compromises freedom. Receiving love, a gift, makes you indebted. It turns the giver into an object in your world. And crucially, it leads to that hell is other people idea from no exit.
Explain that connection again.
Okay, so each conscious self, being for itself, tries to be the absolute center, the I. In doing that, you automatically turn everyone else into an other, an object in your world. But when they look back at you, you become an object in their world.
The gaze of the other objectifies you.
Exactly. It's his constant, unavoidable power struggle. Mutual objectification. One of you must lose his self, he says. You can't both be the absolute subject simultaneously.
And he uses that analogy of the two men in the park.
Yeah, it's great. Each sees himself as the sun, the center, and the other guy is just a planet orbiting him. But the other guy sees himself as the sun, too. So they're both trying to be the center, inevitably reducing each other to objects.
This here place ain't big enough for the both of us.
Very much sums it up. So true. Unifying love. Impossible. Because there's no we subject, the word we, a shared identity. Meaningless in his system. Just isolated consciousness is locked on a struggle.
Grim. And then Socrates lands his final, maybe biggest blow. This philosophy makes gratitude impossible.
The ultimate critique. It hits something even deeper than atheism.
And Sartre confirms it.
With total honesty. It is not that I cannot do it, it is that I will not do it. He chooses ungratefulness. Socrates sees this willful refusal of indebtedness as the bedrock beneath even the atheism.
And Socrates argues gratitude is essential.
A sine qua non, he says. Essential for wisdom, for happiness, for saints, poets, regular people. He points out Sartre's initial annoyance at God's non-existence faded, suggesting maybe he was relieved God wasn't there.
Because God existing would limit his freedom.
Exactly. God's existence would truly vex Sartre, Socrates suggests. It would impose an ultimate limit, an ultimate source of being to be grateful to.
And then the final logical trap.
The ultimate self-contradiction. Sartre says God is impossible because he, Sartre, can't conceive of a being that's both perfectly complete in itself and perfectly free for itself, but in doing so,
He assumes that only what you can conceive is real.
which is an attribute only God would have, the power to define reality by your own mind. So in denying God based on his own conceptual limits, Sartre inadvertently sets himself up as God. Boom, contradiction.
Wow. Game, set, match, Socrates.
Well, Socrates revisits his first suspicion. Sartre is an unwitting spy for God.
How so?
Because his powerful, consistent atheism, by showing the truly bleak consequences, no meaning, no love, no gratitude, everything permitted, will actually push more people away from atheism than towards it. They'll choose love and gratitude over that kind of desolate consistency.
His perfect picture of atheism makes it unappealing.
Exactly. It serves as a warning. And Sartre's last words are just so cryptic.
The Judas comparison.
Yeah. Suggesting maybe he had a secret mission, like Judas, to do the dirty work to show the darkness so others see the light. He couldn't blow his cover either, could he? Leaves you totally wondering.
Oh, what a conversation. What a journey we've just been on, really digging into Sartre's world with Socrates as our relentless guide.
It's intense stuff. Existence precedes essence, absolute freedom, the impossibility of love, heavy concepts.
But this whole exercise, this dialogue Kreeft created, it just shows the power of philosophical debate, doesn't it? Not about winning, but about, pushing your own thinking, uncovering truths, even the hard ones.
Absolutely. Engaging with these big, difficult ideas, even when they lead somewhere dark like Sartre's world, it's still incredibly rewarding. It makes you clarify what you believe, stretches the mind.
For sure. And Socrates kind of suggests that even though he couldn't break Sartre's consistency, that consistency leads to a place most people just couldn't live. So Sartre's victory is also his defeat.
The goal isn't winning the argument, it's seeing the truth and figuring out how to live.
And Socrates' final zinger, Sartre didn't just write about hell and no exit. His whole philosophy is the perfect depiction of hell. And that famous line, hell is other people, profoundly false, Socrates says. The real hell is internal rejecting connection, rejecting gratitude.
Powerful stuff.
So, for you listening, it leaves you thinking, right, if Sartre's consistent atheism leads their no, inherent meaning, no real love, no gratitude, what's the real price of that kind of absolute freedom? What do you choose to guide you, if not some kind of objective good, some inherent meaning?
And maybe just thinking about these questions, maybe while you're out enjoying, the world around you, maybe that simple act of contemplation is already more meaningful than Sartre's nausea allows.
A good thought. We really do encourage you to grab a copy of Kreeft, Socrates Meets Sartre. Experience this intellectual wrestling match for yourself. It's quite something.
It really is a fantastic read.
Okay, until next time, keep diving deep.
Be sure to visit us at 1337podcast.com.
We've got tons of resources and discussions there.
Thank you for joining us on this enlightening adventure.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, and see you next time.
Strength and honor. I am Spartacus.
Thanks for watching. Tap into 1337podcast.com.